Hey, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday Tips to Unleash Your Amazing. Today, my special guest is my longtime friend, Dan Goodwin with CYA Consulting. Dan is an amazing human. We have known each other for, probably 10, 11 years at this point. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Tammy. Yeah, so glad to be here. Yeah. I think after 10 years, we just say a long time. That way it's ambiguous and nobody can guess our age at that point, right?
Well, I mean, a long time for some people could be like a couple weeks.
Well, I've seen relationships that don't last that long. So we are privileged and honored to know this many years, right? Absolutely.
Very, very true. Dan, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and your background and your passion for helping people to really protect their businesses and vet out other people, and where that came from and why it's important to you.
All right. Well, I'll give the 2-minute version that generally turns into 3. But my background and my career started at Sprint Corporation a long time ago, kids. Right. So I started in the mailroom and moved up after a year to the security group, the corporate security group, and I was a security assistant for a while, and then I became a security investigator. And ultimately, I finished my career with Sprint Corporation as a regional security manager. So during my tenure, and I was at Sprint about 19 years, almost 19 years, I was responsible for conducting internal investigations, those most of the time being fraud, theft, embezzlement, sexual harassment, those sort of things. And I actually went to a formal school called the Albert Reed School of Interrogation and Interview Skills in Chicago. And that is the same school that the feds and the staties and the counties and the locals go to. So obviously we were not the Sprint police, right? We were investigators. We didn't do a lot of interrogation. We did a lot of interviews, or as I like to say, we did a lot of visiting with people. So that's kind of my background, the corporate background, which then when I left Sprint, I was able to absolutely leverage those skills and to help small business and medium-sized business owners. And that is my passion, is to help people respond. So reactively respond to crisis situations, or proactively coach them through a scale-up opportunity, starting a new business. The same skill sets apply either way.
Nice. And today we're going to talk a little bit about investigation and how to respond during crises. And when we were talking about that, I was like, I don't know if I know anything about responding during crisis.
No, you've led a charmed and perfect life, Tammy. So yeah, I don't know that you would even understand what we're going to talk about today.
Well, that being said, let's go ahead and why don't you share your first tip around how do you respond during a crisis situation?
Well, I think the first thing is when you have a crisis erupt, and this, we're talking business, but folks, these skills can also be applied to personal crisis. So everything I'm sharing with you today, take it and apply it where it needs to be applied for whatever situation you find in life. But the first step is to acknowledge your feelings. You need to evaluate what happened, but acknowledge your feelings. Here's what I know, that when you take the time to do that, Tammy, just the very act of identifying and naming what you're feeling will help calm the mind. That you acknowledge it and that you say, this is what it is. This is anger. This is frustration. This is guilt. Whatever it is, you name it so that you can get past it, so that you can actually go to the next step. So the next tip is focus on the facts.
Hold on.
Sure.
So basically, before you can move on from that initial shock, you have to validate your own emotion and your own your own thoughts around what happened. And I would assume that you do that maybe even in writing, like journaling about it, like getting all the craziness out of your head.
That is a great way to deal with it, is to write it down. I'm not really a writer downer, but I am I do record a lot of voice memos, transcribe them. I do type a lot on the at least bullet points. I do a lot of that. Pen to paper. That really is probably the preferred way for most people.
Yeah, I think that it helps to compose your thoughts a little bit, but I do a little bit of a mixture of it. I've been doing a lot more voice recording and transcribing when my mind is working really fast and like really spinning, so I can get it all out, because as us DI personalities, we tend to think really quickly, and you want to make sure that you're capturing all of the information as it's coming to you so that you can better respond.
Yeah, I find myself when I'm out driving is when I have the best inspiration. So that's when I'm grabbing the phone. Obviously, I'm not writing anything down, but grabbing the phone and making a voice memo to myself so that I can capture it and reclaim it later.
Awesome. Okay, so what's your next tip?
So the next step is just focus on the facts. And this helps people to absolutely identify what really happened, not what they're exaggerating that happened, not what they're diminishing that happened, but what actually happened. So what happened, who was involved, and what was the apparent on the surface outcome. There may be more facts that show up later in the process that would either enlarge that answer or diminish that answer. But right now, on the surface, what do these facts look like? So that's the next step.
Okay. And when you're doing this, have you already started getting feedback from other people, like in business, to compose all of this, or have we just not got there yet?
This mainly is a process for yourself. You're going to engage others later. I think it's always helpful that we deal with our own assumptions first, and not assign assumptions to somebody else. Well, Tammy knew about this. Well, how do you know Tammy knew about this? Have you asked Tammy? Have you talked to her? No, you haven't. So you need to table that until you can have that conversation to figure out who knew what and when. That's always a good investigator question. Who knew about this and when did they know about it? So
yeah, and how much did they really know about it, or how much of their awareness was really around it?
Right.
Okay. Now, what about the next one? What's your next tip?
So assess the damage. So assessing the damage, has the bleeding stopped, right? I mean, has the situation, have we got the tourniquet on, right? Have we got the bandage wrapped tight enough? Because that piece of it is, if it's a financial issue, Tammy, who has access to the finances or to the intellectual property or to the physical assets, automobiles, buildings, office space, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what about when something happens with it and you're assessing the damage, and maybe you don't have all of your facts yet, but maybe they still have access to assets? Like, what do you do in those situations?
You take emergency measures. You shut it if it's appropriate. You shut off immediately. You have to shut off the access. Right. You've got to absolutely until you know more. So, for example, when I was at Sprint, and we had a bad situation come up, and an employee. Let's say an employee was accused of theft or there was a security breach. we may preemptively disable access to all of the systems that employee had until we have the opportunity to talk to that employee.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, that causes stress. If you go into the office and none of your logins work, and the systems, you, your card key doesn't work to get in the building. That's always a good one, right? so that's always an indicator that something has gone wrong. Now, that does create stress in the employee. However, the protection of the corporation probably 99.9% preempts or yeah, it takes over the position of security to protect the corporation until somebody can get with the employee, right, and ask the question.
Yeah. And let me talk about that on the personal side. You can also change your locks if you need to. If something's happened and you need to protect your assets, change your locks.
Yeah. So you had a friend that did that, right?
Yeah. Change your locks, change the garage code,
right.
Protect yourself, CYA.
Right. So that's physical. One of the things that it also leads to, and this is a little more difficult to, a little more challenging to control, and that's your brand reputation, right? Mm-hmm. So protecting assets is also protecting in real life, online. Who has access to your websites. Right. I mean, these are great. Who has access to your databases, your CRMs? We live in the cloud, right? Who has access to OneDrive, Google Drive? Who has access to all of these different moving parts that make up you and your brand, because you are your brand no matter what. So affinity groups, joint venture partners. These are things that people need to think about, because they may have a joint venture partner that has access. They're using a common software to keep track for each other as a part of their agreement, right? I mean, these are all things that people, in the midst of chaos, in the midst of response, in the midst of anger, they forget to ask these additional questions other than the obvious ones of change your locks, change your garage door code, that sort of thing.
Well, and I think that's, like, you brought up such a good point, like your Google Drive. We share so many things with people, and we may not even know all of the individual items that we've shared. And so going back in there to revoke access can be pretty time consuming.
It can. And we forget. Mm-hmm. People forget what they've given access to. So my suggestion is, well, number one, I'm not an IT guy. We need to call Burton Kelso or somebody like Burton, right? But when you get ready to work a project, you create this shared drive, and things go along swimmingly. And 6 months later, you're done with the project, and 18 months later, all of a sudden, what happens? We forget to go back and revoke access or remove the folder or take out our assets, whatever. That's a great point, Tammy.
Yeah, I noticed that with previous VAs that I've had. I'll look and see a notification that says, such and such has, accessed this document. That's one of my documents. And I'll be like, oh God, who has access to all that stuff? So that is something that I will definitely be more conscious about in the future.
Yep. Yeah. Always helps. So
what about what do you have next?
So the next step after kind of evaluating what happened is employ our critical thinking skills. So you review your contributing factors. So this is where you've stopped the bleeding, you've changed the locks, you've denied access, you've changed passwords, whatever you needed to do. Mm-hmm. So then it's time to literally sit down and say, we know what happened. Now, why did this happen? What are the holes in our systems? What was inherent? Here's what I know, Tammy. As businesses grow, they evolve, and our systems evolve and morph as we get better at what we do. And sometimes we forget to go back to the beginning and close a hole or close a loophole or change an access, or everybody was an administrator at one time and now we need to make it a power user or a user, when it comes to what can they impact? Can they get into, the machine code? Can they make themselves an admin? And again, I'm not an IT guy. I'm just looking at the reason I'm bringing these up is because I've experienced these I saw this at Sprint, and I've seen this with other companies that I now help, in my Encore career as a consultant.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing to do is as you grow, you always have to be able to go back to the beginning and really look towards, how can you tighten up your systems in a way that makes you not even just more protected, but also more protected and more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. So if the risk still exists, then you've got to put a mitigation strategy in place right away. And again, that can be initially extreme, like cutting everybody's access, right? But if it doesn't exist, then if this was a one-off, if you got hacked, if somebody left a computer terminal open and you got hacked, or somebody was a bad actor because they took advantage of the access that they normally wouldn't have, then you've just got to figure out how to prevent reoccurrence. So back in the day, when we would do investigations at Sprint, we would identify somebody's computer that had done X, Y, and Z. So when we met with that employee, we would say, we have a record of your employee, of your computer accessing this particular program at this time, this date, and did this transaction. And it dealt with an embezzlement. And, it wasn't me. Okay, well, let me ask you this. Do you know what the policy is to protect our computers when we leave our desk? And it was always screen lock with password, right? It was always crawled. So you're telling me that maybe you forgot to lock your computer at that one time. So either way, and 99% of the time, listen, it was them, right? But to get them to admit a security violation was almost as bad as the embezzlement itself, that they forgot to do that as they walked away. And listen, we're human. We've all forgotten to do that. Hopefully somebody hasn't slipped in behind you and cut themselves a $1,500 check, right?
Hopefully not. Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So next is employ additional resources, internal and external. So find out and this is where you can start talking to people, right? This is where you're looking, if you're inside a company, you're talking to your trusted advisors, you're talking to your in-house counsel, you're talking to HR, you're talking to your senior managers, you're talking to maybe a board of advisors if you're a small company, or maybe you're just talking to the fire pit crew. The fire pit crew, those people that you have over on a cool, crisp fall evening, and you sit around the fire pit and you solve all the world's problems. Those people, you've got to find somebody to bounce ideas and information off of that you trust, to try and go this alone. And I hate the word try, but to attempt to go this alone is not probably in your best interest. You need some outside perspective to make sure you're not missing something.
Yeah. The right people, though, like not.
Yeah, exactly. The right people.
Best friends, boyfriends, girlfriend, or whatever. Yeah. Like not everybody needs to hear what's happening, right?
No, there's no. You
want to be strategic with who you're talking to.
Yeah, your inner circle, right? Yeah. People you know, like, and trust to babysit your kids, right? Those people, those are the ones you want. So anyway, so that kind of wraps up how you start to employ your critical thinking skills.
Nice. And you have created a course on this, correct?
Yeah, and we're kind of going through that that outline right now, and a couple more steps. But yeah, so yeah, it's called Don't Get Effed Again, which stands for Don't Get Fooled Again. I don't know where people are watching from, but they may have heard it differently in their region, right? So Don't Get Fooled Again, very important. Kind of like my name of my company, CYA Consulting, is Cover Your Assets Consulting. May have heard it differently in your neck of the woods. Little tongue in cheek. I've always been a little bit of a smart astronaut. So. So.
Love it. Love it. So how could people get information on this amazing course that you've created so they can, protect their assets?
Oh, thanks for asking. It's real easy. www.cyacourse.com. cyacourse.com. And yeah, it's 12 videos, about 5 minutes a piece, and 12 worksheets. And everything we've talked about today, if people will work through the worksheets, they will absolutely, they'll have a good feeling for identifying, what happened, and then who knew, and then mitigation, the steps to take, and then planning that it never happens again, right? And then executing the strategy and revisiting it. So they'll have a good construct or an outline, Tammy, on how they address a crisis situation right now. And this is also good for people that just came through a crisis, right? I mean, it's basically in the military, they call it an after action review, right? They figure it out and go back and review, what went well, what didn't go well, et cetera, et cetera.
Nice. Any other additional thoughts?
Well, a couple more things. How you move forward is so important, and that's part of the course. And then how you implement your game change, and it comes down to strategies and tactics, right? Strategy is the overarching goal. Tactics are the day-to-day operations on how you meet those overarching goals. And certainly that plays a part in how you manage crisis and how you respond. And me, Tammy, I'm forward-thinking, solutions focused. I am aware that bad things happen. I've investigated bad things happening. We can't afford to stay in the past and wallow in that muck and mire and mess. We have to figure out how to move forward, because if we're always looking behind us, we can't move forward, right? It's put it in the rearview mirror and fix it and move forward and be successful.
Yeah, and I think that comes from time and healing.
Yes.
And the way that you do that is definitely by getting the crazy out of your head and getting those thoughts, taking proactive steps to protect yourself in the future, and then having faith. Yeah.
And it's having faith in people. It's when you're going through a crisis, it's easy to lose faith in people and make an assumption that everybody's out to get you. I would pose that 97% of the people out there have good and decent intentions. The 3% keeps me busy, or kept me busy at Sprint. I choose not to deal with those people in my life now. I have more control over that as far as my own who I engage with, who I go into business with. So, but that's I would always pose that we need to trust and verify. Reagan said years ago, trust but verify, but I always say trust and verify at the same time as you get ready to engage with people on projects.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to understand that whenever you have gone through something, a challenge or, trauma, because this is, whether it's at your business or in your personal life, and you've had somebody that maybe manipulated you, um, you do lose faith in people for a while. And it's really important to do the work to heal that, because otherwise you're looking at every person that you meet as a potential, like, is this person a threat? And what you focus on does tend to come up in your life more. And so learning to heal after you've had something traumatic happen, it takes time. And I think that you really have to have a lot of patience and compassion for yourself during those times, and making sure that you're just doing the steps that it takes to move forward in a healthy way.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the word trust is that applies in two ways, that it does impact your trust of others. The challenge on the trauma and healing part is that you have to learn to trust yourself,
Yes.
because we beat ourselves up because we shoulda, coulda, woulda known that fact about that person, and that creates guilt and shame. And
Mm-hmm.
we beat ourselves up much longer than others beat us up, right? And so the trust factor is to learn. I'm a pretty trusting person. I'm not cynical, but I am always processing information when I meet people to figure out. But my challenge is when I make a mistake, to relearn how to trust myself, my instincts, my superpowers. And I think sometimes that head game is even more important than the external head game that we play in the world and how we show up.
Yeah, I think that that is a really good point. The trusting yourself and trusting that, like, when it comes to, meeting people, I think that people always show us who they are. So we don't have to really prejudge them. We just have to recognize when there's red flags.
Yeah.
And typically you're going to see those red flags, but a lot of times we've been taught to, give people a chance. And that's not in itself bad advice. But if the flags are going shoo, 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 or even just be aware of that, and understand that you don't have to keep giving people additional chances to hurt you. Like that first time that something happens, you might want to take note and start writing it down, voice recording, whatever your way is of keeping track of it, because I think that we tend to forget that things happen. And then, 6 months down the road, when you're whammied upside the head, you're like, I thought something was off.
Right. Right. And sometimes that's sometimes I've seen clients that just they want to avoid the conflict. They know something's wrong, and they may not have identified it fully, but they know something is wrong. And when you don't address that head on, sometimes it can cost you financially, but it can cost you mentally and emotionally also. And I see people working through this. And listen, I'm not a psychiatrist, a psychologist. I don't play one on TV, right? I mean, I stay in my lane and I refer to the experts. And if somebody is coming to me with the head games piece of this, they need to get help on that piece of it in order to move forward. One of the things I challenge people on is their critical thinking skills and their intuitive decision making. And that's one thing. Critical thinking skills are not taught in school. I mean, oh my goodness. I think logic and teaching the Socratic method to understand knowledge,
Mm.
I think those are important. I mean, it's just I see this every single day, and the reason people ask questions, Tammy, there's two reasons. It's either you're seeking information or you're seeking validation. If you're seeking if you're staying curious, I made this post the other day, kind of on the Dos Equis guy, right? Stay curious, my friends, right? So, but if you stay curious and ask questions and you keep your emotions in check, you'll learn so much more. If you're just seeking validation of an opinion or a thought, that's the wrong reason to ask questions. The validation, and it's too easy right now. We just came off this hot political season, but you can take this, you can extrapolate this into family, religion, tradition, and we ask questions for validation, and we need to be asking questions for new data, new facts, new data sets in order to find out, do I have all the information I need to hold this position? Anyway, now you just got me preaching.
Well, it's true though. We do, when something has happened to us, it's really human nature, right? To need to be validated for that experience. Like it really is. But true healing comes from being able to validate yourself and understanding, sometimes you have to get that information, but it's not about, this is what happened. Can you save me from myself sometimes? But it's more about, I'm curious, have you ever had this situation and how did you move through it? Not, hey, why don't you make me feel better about what I experienced? Like, give me some tips. Like, how did you move through, this trauma or this negative experience that you've had? Like, share that with me. Ask those kind of questions. How do I move? What is my next step? And a lot of times that next step is really just getting it out of your head and being able to look at the information and go, okay, I can do this. I now understand what happened. I evaluated it and I see that these are the next proactive steps for me. And a lot of times that's going to be getting support from somebody that's been there.
Yeah, I totally agree. So you're asking all of the right questions. So people say, well, that's deep. How do you go from investigations to life philosophy? Guess what? It's all intertwined. It's all intertwined. It's all about worldview. It's all about how we impact our world and how we show up and how we help people. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, listen, we're a lot the same. Driven personality. I want to help people fix things, right? I want to help people. You need to go do this, Tammy. Do this, do this, do this. When we need to be leading with questions and say, well, Tammy, what could you do in response to this? What do you think you should do in response to this? And then the most important question is, what would you do? What are you willing to do to respond to this? Because if you want to stay stuck in the stress and the drama, and you're not willing to make any changes or have conversations or process information, I don't know that there's a lot I can help you to move forward from that step until you choose to choose the process that will provide you healing. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. What I found, and I think that one of my my strengths for helping people is when you are in the middle of the trauma, it changes your brain, at least hopefully just temporarily. Sometimes it has even longer term effects. So when your brain has been altered because you're experiencing this stress and this trauma, it's hard to answer those questions.
Yeah,
I think that holding space for the person and, maybe giving options, like, would you like to prosecute them? Or would you like to just figure out a way to move forward and just release it?
Yeah,
Like
the chemical makeup, the things that fire in our brain when we're going through stress creates, hits the adrenal so hard and creates adrenaline, and people adapt to that, and then they're always in a state of, instead of fight, flight, or freeze, they're always, their brain is saying, where's the adrenaline, right? And they're stuck there. Listen, I used to have a coworker that wasn't happy unless she was upset. Have you met people like that? I mean, they're not, they don't feel like they're being seen or heard unless they present themselves as continually upset or mad. And those people are not a joy to be around. So and it's just the alteration of the chemicals in your brain. You're not getting the dopamine hits, you're getting adrenaline hits, and that, as you know, that just creates all kinds of physical, physical, mental, emotional well-being. So now we've gone from investigation to life philosophy to health, so we're going to cover it all today.
I always love it when we get together and we can have like a really deep, good talk. I mean, I think that that's super important, that you have friends like that really get you, and they'll go down the rabbit hole with you.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder how many we can cover. How long was this live today? So,
well, we're at 37 minutes now. It's all good.
Okay. All right. So what else you got? What else you want to know? Are we done, or what do you want to do now?
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess we'll wrap up.
Okay.
Well, thank you everybody for watching. Please reach out if you have any additional questions on how we can support you in investigating and then healing from the traumas that you've had, and understanding kind of where that comes from. Have an amazing day.